My son hit me on a Thursday night, and on Friday morning I still stood at the stove making his breakfast. That sentence feels wrong if you have never been a father my age in a quiet kitchen at 6:10 in the morning. It sounds weak. People judge that kind of thing from a safe distance, as if love shuts off cleanly the second someone hurts you. Mine did not. I had spent almost 40 years feeding people before they told me the truth. Children in a school cafeteria, tired teachers, my wife when her hands hurt, and Marcus when he was too proud to apologize but not too proud to eat. Before I tell you what he saw at that table, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments, where does family care end and control begin? My name is Henry Whitaker. I am 68, retired from the public schools, and I know exactly how long pancake batter can sit before it turns heavy. I also know the sound of my son's key in my back door. 3 clicks, 1 hard shove, then his shoes on the mat without wiping them. That night I was at the table with Eleanor's old recipe notebook open beside the butter dish when Marcus came in carrying a navy folder like it was evidence, and I was already guilty. He did not say hello. He looked at the pan cooling on the stove, at the 2 clean plates in the rack, then at me. Marcus had learned that look at work. He managed operations for a private home care agency, and he could soften his voice until strangers trusted him. "Dad, we need to stop pretending you're fine on your own," he said. "I am fine enough to know when you want something." He smiled, but only with the bottom half of his face. He set the folder between us and tapped it twice. Inside were colored tabs and a printed testimonial with my name already typed at the bottom. There was also a draft page with words like authorized caregiver, medication coordination, emergency access, and durable power of attorney. None of it was signed. That was the point. His agency was trying to get into a senior care referral network, and tomorrow morning he had arranged a little family-centered care visit in my kitchen. I was supposed to sit there, eat what I had cooked, and tell them Marcus was the reason I still felt safe at home. There was a time when I would have done almost anything to keep that kitchen from turning into a fight. Eleanor used to say Marcus could smell pancakes through a locked door. When he was a boy, he would come downstairs with his hair sticking up and pretend he did not need anybody. I put 3 pancakes on his plate anyway. Years later, after Eleanor died, he would still come by after a bad week, sit in the same chair, and wait until I slid food in front of him. Sometimes he said thank you. More often he talked about work, staffing shortages, and families who did not understand what care cost. I heard the complaint under all of it. I was still alive, still in my own apartment, still making my own decisions, and somehow that had become an inconvenience. But grief makes an old man bargain with smaller and smaller things. I told myself if Marcus kept eating here, some part of him still belonged to this table. That evening he opened the folder as if he were helping me understand a coupon. "Denise Alvarez will stop by around 8:30, he said. "County aging intake. Nothing scary. She just needs to see you're supported. Karen Holt from the network may come with her for 10 minutes. If she likes the family piece, it helps our referral contract." Our? Dad. He used that one word the way he used a gentle tone at work, to make a demand sound smaller. "You know what I mean. My team, my future, your care. It lines up." I read the first line of the testimonial. "My son Marcus has made it possible for me to remain safely at home." The sentence was printed in a large, friendly font, as if I had already said it and only forgotten to sign. Under it, Tanya Brooks from his office had left a yellow note. "Henry can sign after breakfast. Keep it warm, natural, family-focused." That note told me more than Marcus meant to tell. He had sold my breakfast before I agreed to it. I closed the folder halfway and kept my hand on the cover so he could not slide the signature page back under my fingers. I am not signing that. The room changed in a small way. The refrigerator hummed louder. Marcus looked toward the hallway, where the spare key hook hung empty because his key was already in his pocket. "You're making this hard for no reason." I told him he wanted me to say he took care of me. He said he did. I said he came here when he needed something, and the line landed harder than I expected, because both of us knew the key in his pocket proved it. For the first time that night, his patience cracked across the middle. He leaned over the table, one palm flat beside Eleanor's notebook, close enough that I smelled wintergreen gum and office coffee. Listen to me. Tomorrow morning you are going to be normal. You're going to make breakfast because that's what you do. You're going to tell Denise you're grateful. You're going to tell Karen this is a family that understands care. Then you're going to sign where I marked it. I looked at the typed sentence again. Safely at home. The words sat there neat and clean while my son's voice turned the kitchen smaller. I asked what happened if I refused, and Marcus picked up the folder, lined the pages with a hard tap, and tucked it under his arm. Then I have to start telling people the truth, that you're slipping, that you're scared, that you get confused and stubborn, and I have been covering for you because I'm your son. He walked to the back door, stopped with his hand on the knob, and smiled as if the argument had already been settled. I'll be here at 8. Don't burn the pancakes. Marcus did not leave after that first threat. He turned the lock, opened the door a hand's width, then shut it again, as if he had remembered I was not a client he could reschedule. He came back to the table and pulled one page from the folder. This one had boxes beside my name. Emergency contact update, home access consent, medication oversight, communication authorization. The language looked harmless until you understood how a son could use it. With one signature, Marcus could call my doctor, speak to Denise as my family support, tell Karen I had invited his agency into my life, and explain every future objection as confusion. It's not a trap, he said. I told him to take out the power of attorney paragraph if that was true. His jaw tightened, and he said that paragraph protected me. When I asked from what, he did not look away. From yourself, some days. That was the first clean insult. Not loud, not drunken, not thrown out and regretted. Practiced. He had said some version of it to other families, and now he was bringing it home. I pushed the page back across the table and told him he did not get to turn me into a case study. Marcus caught the paper before it slid off the edge. You already are one. He pulled out his phone and opened a message thread with Tanya from his office. The top line was ordinary enough. Friday, family model visit, 8:30, Henry confirmed. Under it, Tanya had written, Great! Karen likes real family proof better than polished brochures. Marcus had replied with a thumbs up and a sentence that made my stomach turn cold. Dad will say it in his own words. He knows this helps both of us. I had not confirmed anything. I had not known Karen Holt existed until 20 minutes earlier. I had not told Marcus he could use my name with a county worker or a referral network. He watched me read it and took my silence for weakness. See? This is already in motion. Then stop it. I can't stop it because you got proud at the wrong time. He took the phone back and locked the screen. Do you know what a referral contract does for a small agency? He asked. Do you know how many sons would kill to take care of their father and build something at the same time? That was the second insult. He made self-interest sound like duty. I stood because sitting made him taller than he was. My knees complained, but I kept one hand on the table and reached for Eleanor's notebook with the other. Marcus's eyes followed that notebook, and for a second I saw the boy who had once begged her for the first pancake off the griddle. Then the man came back. Leave that out of this, he said. This is my kitchen. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You get emotional, and then I'm the bad guy for trying to keep you safe. He stepped around the table and put his body between me and the hallway. Not a shove yet, not a crime anyone could photograph, just a son using height, a folder, a key, and a professional voice to make his father smaller in his own apartment. I told him to leave the papers and go. He said the papers were his. I told him my signature was mine. That was when his face went flat. You always do this, Marcus said. You make food, you make me feel guilty, and then you act like that counts as love. I said, if you thought it wasn't love, you would have stopped coming hungry. The slap came so fast I heard it before I understood it was on my face. A flat crack, skin against skin, then the corner of my mouth caught on a tooth, and the kitchen light turned too bright. I grabbed the back of the chair because falling would have given him a better story. Marcus froze with his hand still half raised, and for 1 second, he looked younger than 41. almost frightened by what he had done before he could explain it away. Then he dressed it up anyway. "You made me do that," he said, quieter than before. "You keep pushing until people have to stop you." I tasted blood and said nothing. That silence was the first useful thing I did all night. If I shouted, he could call me unstable. If I shoved him, he could call me dangerous. If I begged, he could call me afraid. So I stood in my own kitchen with Eleanor's notebook under my palm and let Marcus hear only the refrigerator, the clock, and his own breathing. He lowered his hand and looked toward the back door, not toward my face. "Put ice on it." "Leave," I said. He gathered the folder with careful hands now, the careful hands of a man already planning how to explain his own violence. At the door, he turned back. "Tomorrow is still happening. Don't embarrass me in front of Denise. Don't embarrass yourself in front of Karen. Make breakfast, be normal, and we'll call tonight a bad moment." A bad moment. That was what he named the mark blooming under my cheekbone. Not a choice, not a warning. A moment, the way people talk about traffic or a spilled drink. He opened the door and the hall light caught Glenn Porter's apartment across the landing. Glenn was my neighbor, a retired lineman with a smart doorbell he loved more than most people loved their grandchildren. His door was closed, but the little blue ring glowed. Marcus noticed it too. "You better hope he didn't hear you yelling." Then he left with his key, the unsigned pages, and the certainty that I would do what I had always done. I wiped my mouth with a dish towel, put Eleanor's notebook back in the drawer, and took the pancake mix from the cabinet. Not because I forgave him, because by morning, breakfast was going to mean something else. I did not sleep in bed that night. I sat in the kitchen chair with a bag of frozen peas wrapped in a towel against my cheek and wrote down the order of things before Marcus could rearrange them for me. Time he came in, words on Tanya's message, the line about being normal, the slap, the blue light on Glenn Porter's doorbell. The fact that Marcus left with the folder and the key. My handwriting shook at first, then settled into the block letters I used for cafeteria inventory. Flour, eggs, milk, butter, injury, threat, breakfast. I did not call emergency services. Maybe someone else would have, and maybe they would have been right. But I knew my son well enough to know a patrol car in the parking lot would become his best evidence by sunrise. Henry panicked. Henry escalated. Henry gets confused at night. I needed people to see the morning Marcus had built, not the old man he wanted to describe. At 11:40, I called Denise Alvarez's office number from the card Marcus had left clipped to the packet. I expected voicemail and got it. I said my name, my address, and that the morning visit should still happen, but she should come in as an observer, not as a witness for my son's presentation. I told her there had been pressure around documents and that I did not want to discuss details on a recording. Then I called Karen Holt and got a sharper voicemail with the kind of greeting people use when their calendar is already full. I said Marcus had promised her a family care conversation in my kitchen, and she could have it if she came early and listened before he arrived. I did not accuse him in those messages. I did not say he hit me. I had a bruise for that, and a bruise is more useful before people tell you what it is supposed to mean. The hardest call was across the hall. Glenn Porter answered like a man who had been awake with the television low. When I asked if his doorbell had picked up anything, he went quiet. Then he said, "Henry, I heard raised voices. I didn't hear everything." I told him I did not need everything. I needed him to come over at 8:15, sit at my table, and say only what he knew. He did not like that. Glenn was kind, but he hated being pulled into family trouble. He had a bad knee, a daughter in Arizona, and no appetite for courtrooms or statements. I told him Marcus had mentioned the doorbell before leaving. That changed the silence. "He saw the light?" Glenn asked. "Yes." At 7 the next morning, Glenn knocked in his slippers and brought the little device manual with him. At 2:16 in the morning, Marcus texted me, "Tomorrow, please don't act weird. This visit affects my job." I stared at the word please until it stopped looking polite. Then another message came in before I could put the phone down. "I know you. You'll cool off. Make the pancakes and let me talk." That second message was the first proof he had not struck me in surprise and gone home ashamed. He had folded the slap into logistics. I took screenshots and sent them to myself by email because Marcus had once set up my phone backup, and I no longer trusted what he could reach. The act of doing that made my hands steadier. I was not building a trap. I was keeping him from erasing the one he had already built around me. I cooked after I made the calls. That was the part no one would understand unless they had lived inside a habit long enough for it to become a language. I measured flour from the blue canister, cracked 2 eggs, and used Eleanor's note about letting the batter rest even when the house is restless. But I changed the table. Marcus's chair stayed where it always was, facing the stove, because I wanted him to see breakfast first and people second. Denise would sit by the window with her notebook. Karen would sit near the outlet where she could charge her phone and pretend she was only passing through. Glenn would sit at the far end, half in the hallway's line of sight. I put my own chair with my bruised cheek toward the morning light. That was not theater. That was refusing to hide the only fact Marcus could not retype. Denise arrived first, in a county fleece jacket, carrying a small notebook and the careful face of someone who knew not to promise rescue at a doorway. She saw my cheek before she saw the pancakes. Karen came 7 minutes later, heels too clean for my linoleum, folder hugged to her ribs. Glenn lowered himself into the end chair and set his phone face down beside his coffee. Nobody asked for the full story. I thanked them for coming, poured coffee, and told them Marcus would be there at 8. Denise said, "Mr. Whitaker, are you safe right now?" I said, "For the next 12 minutes, yes." That answer made Karen look up. At 7:59, Marcus's key turned in the back door. I lifted the last pancake from the griddle and put it on his plate. Before the key turned, Karen made one boundary clear. "I am not here to ambush one of our partner candidates," she said. "If this is a family fight, I leave." Denise nodded and added that she could note safety concerns, pressure around consent, and what she personally observed. She was not a judge, and she would not call my son an abuser because I wanted her to. That almost made me send them away. I had invited people because I needed the morning witnessed, and they were reminding me that a witnessed morning still had limits. Glenn saved me from answering by sliding his phone across the table. The doorbell app showed a short clip from the hallway. Marcus's voice through the door, my voice raised once, then footsteps. No slap, no perfect proof, just enough to be dangerous in either direction. That was when the lock moved. Marcus came in smiling before he finished opening the door. He had dressed for performance. Navy quarter zip, clean sneakers, agency badge clipped to his belt even though he was in his father's kitchen. The smell of pancakes reached him first. His shoulders loosened, and I watched relief move across his face before he saw anyone but me. "There we go," he said. "So you finally got it." He stepped toward his chair and saw the plate I had set for him. 3 pancakes, 2 strips of bacon, coffee black the way he took it when he wanted to look busy. Then his eyes moved past the plate to Denise by the window, Karen beside the outlet, and Glenn at the far end with both hands wrapped around his mug. The color came up his neck so fast it looked painful. For one breath, the kitchen belonged to the truth. Marcus recovered with the same speed he used at work. "Good morning," he said, and his voice turned smooth again. He kissed the air near my shoulder without touching me and turned toward Karen. "I didn't realize everyone was early." Karen did not stand. Denise wrote nothing yet. Glenn looked down at his coffee, then finally looked up. I put Marcus's plate in his usual place and sat with my bruised cheek toward the window. Marcus saw it. Karen saw it. Denise saw it. Nobody gasped, and that almost hurt worse. The bruise did not need theater. It sat on my face and made Marcus's badge look ridiculous. "Dad slipped last night," Marcus said before anyone asked. "He didn't want to worry anybody. I told him to ice it." The lie entered the kitchen neatly, trained and ready. He reached toward my shoulder and I moved my chair back just enough that his hand fell into empty air. Denise looked from his hand to my chair. Karen opened her folder. "Mr. Whitaker," she said, "did you fall?" Marcus answered before I could. "He got dizzy. He's been having these little episodes." I kept my voice even. "No, My son hit me after I refused to sign his paperwork. Marcus laughed once, too sharply. That is not what happened. This is exactly the volatility I was worried about. He turned to Denise with professional concern, and I saw the counterattack take shape. Not denial only, but diagnosis. Denise asked whether there was paperwork on the table. Marcus said no, then remembered the printed testimonial Tanya had sent and the copy I had laid under my napkin. I slid it across to Karen. The first line carried my typed gratitude. The note below it said I could sign after breakfast. Karen read it, then looked at Marcus without the polite softness she had brought in. You told Tanya he had confirmed. Marcus said, he did, verbally, in general terms. I said, I did not. Glenn cleared his throat and said he had heard voices in the hallway after 10:30, Marcus leaving, and Marcus saying something about tomorrow. He did not say he heard the slap. He did not give me more than he had. That limit mattered. It kept the room from becoming a mob, and made Marcus's overreach easier to see. Marcus tried one more version. He said I had been grieving badly, that I sometimes confused help with control, that a professional could recognize resistance before family could. Denise finally wrote then. Not fast, not dramatically. She asked me if I wanted Marcus to remain in the apartment for the rest of the visit. I said no. The word landed harder than any accusation I had made. Marcus stared at me, then at his untouched pancakes. You're doing this over one bad moment, he said. Karen closed the testimonial copy inside her folder. Denise told Marcus the conversation about my needs would continue without him present. Glenn stood slowly and moved toward the hallway, leaving enough room for Marcus to pass. My son picked up his badge from where it had twisted on his belt, and for the first time since I had known him, he looked ashamed in front of the people he wanted to impress. At the door, he turned back to the plate. You set me up, he said. I looked at the pancakes cooling in front of his chair and answered with the only sentence that felt clean. No, you set the table. I only let them sit down. After Marcus left, nobody touched his plate. Denise asked me to describe the pressure around the documents in plain order, and she stopped me twice when I drifted toward old family hurt instead of facts. Karen asked for permission to photograph the testimonial copy, not my face. That distinction told me what kind of morning this really was. The bruise had changed the room, but the paper connected the bruise to Marcus's work. Without the paper, I was an injured father. With it, I was the father a care manager had tried to use as proof of trust the morning after he hit him. Glenn added one narrow sentence. He had heard Marcus leave late, and had heard Marcus mention the next morning. He would not say more. I respected him for that and hated needing it. Denise did not promise punishment. She said she could document that I reported being struck, that I declined my son's private participation in the intake conversation, and that I described pressure around consent and access. She offered information about Adult Protective Services follow-up, safety planning, and changing emergency contacts. Karen said even less. She looked like a woman subtracting risk from a spreadsheet in her head. Mr. Whitaker, she said, until we understand what happened here, your son will not use this visit as a family care reference. That was not justice. It was a locked door Marcus had expected me to hold open for him. When they finally left, his pancakes had gone stiff at the edges. I scraped them into the trash and saw my hand shake for the first time all morning. The table had worked, but it had not made me feel strong. It had made me visible, and visible is not the same thing as safe. On my phone, Marcus had already sent one message. You don't know what you just did. The second came while I was rinsing his plate. I hope they enjoy watching an old man melt down. By noon, I understood that the breakfast had exposed him, but it had also taught him exactly which lie he needed to sell next. Marcus did not try to win me back first. He tried to win the hallway. By 11:30, Glenn knocked once and came in holding his phone like it might burn him. He called me, Glenn said. Asked what I thought I heard. Asked if I knew you were under stress. Glenn had not answered much, but Marcus did not need much. A question can be a leash when a neighbor wants to stay decent and uninvolved. Then Karen forwarded me one message from Tanya Brooks, Marcus's office coordinator. It was polite, short, and poisonous. Marcus is concerned the family visit became emotionally unsafe after Henry reacted to necessary care planning. We want to protect his dignity and avoid escalating an older adult's confusion. My bruise was on my face, but his words were already dressed for a meeting. At noon, Karen called. She did not apologize for calling, and she did not sound convinced of anything. That was the damage. "Mr. Whitaker, I have to ask direct questions," she said. "Did you raise your voice last night? Did you invite people this morning to embarrass your son? Did you understand the paperwork before refusing it?" I answered yes. Yes with a limit, and yes better than Marcus hoped. Karen listened, but I heard typing in the background. She was building a record that could go either way. When I mentioned the slap, she said, "I understand that is your report." Your report. Not the truth, not a lie. A careful phrase that protected her process and left me standing alone inside it. Denise was no easier. She returned in the early afternoon for a brief safety follow-up, parked at the curb instead of the lot, and sat in the same chair Marcus had left untouched. She looked at my cheek and asked whether I wanted medical care. I said I did not need it. She closed her notebook. "Mr. Whitaker, if you want this to hold anywhere outside this kitchen, you need documentation." That sentence embarrassed me more than the bruise. I had spent the morning believing witnesses had solved the worst of it. Denise made me say the plain thing. 3 people had seen an injury after the fact, but none had seen the hand land. Glenn had a hallway clip. Karen had a bad morning in a kitchen. Marcus had a professional vocabulary ready to wrap around all of it. Then Glenn played the clip from his doorbell. The first seconds were useless. Hallway hum, elevator cable, a neighbor's television. Then my own voice cut through, sharper than I remembered. "If you thought it wasn't love, you would have stopped coming hungry." There was a thud that might have been a chair, then Marcus's voice lower and harder, too muffled to catch every word. The slap itself was inside my kitchen, behind a closed door. The clip made me sound angry and Marcus sound controlled. Glenn's face folded with guilt. "Henry, I swear there was more," he said. "It only saves short clips unless motion keeps going." Marcus had guessed the danger faster than I had. A partial truth can serve the first person who labels it. By 4 o'clock, the false version had legs. Tanya sent Karen a cleaned-up timeline where Marcus arrived for a supportive visit, found me agitated, and became the target of a planned humiliation involving a neighbor and county worker. Marcus texted me one screenshot of that timeline with no comment. He did not need to add one. The message was, "I can still make you the problem." I put the phone face down and looked at Eleanor's notebook on the counter. For the first time since the slap, I felt the old urge to make more food, call him, soften the edge, explain that I had not wanted to ruin him. That urge was the most dangerous thing in the room. If I fed him now, I would be feeding the lie too. Karen's second call made the room colder. "The network is pausing the family reference piece," she said. At first I thought she meant Marcus had lost it. Then she corrected me. They were pausing the whole piece because the scene looked unsafe and disputed. That meant Marcus had not been removed. I had been made unusable. His bruise-producing hand and my breakfast table were now both filed under risk. Karen said she could not let a partner candidate use a coerced testimonial, but she also could not treat my kitchen as proof of misconduct without documentation. The middle ground sounded reasonable and punished me anyway. Marcus still had his job language. I had a cheekbone turning purple and a table full of careful limits. Glenn called while I was putting on my shoes. Marcus had texted him too. Not a threat exactly. Worse, a friendly warning. "Henry is upset and may try to pull you into this. Please don't share edited clips or expose yourself legally." Glenn read it to me in a low voice, ashamed before he had done anything wrong. I told him not to answer. He said his doorbell storage was almost full because deliveries had been triggering it all week. If we waited, the clip could disappear. That turned my next hour into a race I had not known I was running. Marcus did not need to destroy evidence with a hammer. He only needed ordinary technology to keep doing what it did. Overwrite old sounds with new ones. Denise stood to leave and gave me 2 instructions, both plain enough to hurt. Go to urgent care before the bruise changed. Ask Glenn to export the original clip before the device overwrote anything else. And do not exaggerate what you have, she said. If the proof is limited, say it is limited. After she left, I sat with my keys in my hand for almost 10 minutes. Marcus had made me look volatile, maybe even mean. He had not won, but he had made winning feel dirty. At 4:20, I put on a clean shirt, took the testimonial copy, the screenshots, and my insurance card, and locked the door behind me. The pancakes were gone from the trash, but the smell of them was still in the kitchen like an accusation. Urgent care was full of people who had better reasons to be there than a stubborn old man with a bruise from his son. A little boy coughed into his sleeve. A roofer held a towel around 2 fingers. I almost left twice before the nurse called my name. Shame is practical. It says, you can still go home. It says, this will make it real. Dr. Samir Patel came in after the nurse took my blood pressure and asked me what happened. I told him my adult son struck me on the left side of my face after I refused to sign care-related papers. Saying it in that room changed the size of it. The words no longer belonged only to my kitchen. Dr. Patel did not widen his eyes or ask why I had waited. He examined the cheek, the cut inside my lip, and the tenderness along my jaw, then said the note would document injuries and my statement. It will not prove who did it, he added. I thanked him for not pretending otherwise. The discharge papers looked smaller than I wanted. Contusion to left cheek, minor intraoral laceration, patient reports being struck by adult son, advised follow-up and safety resources. That was all. No thunder. No stamp that said Marcus was lying. I folded the papers into the same envelope as Tanya's testimonial and felt foolish for expecting a doctor to give me a verdict. In the parking lot, I sent Karen a photo of the visit summary with one sentence. This is documentation, not the whole story. She replied 9 minutes later. Received. Please preserve all original messages and recordings. The word original mattered. It meant screenshots could be challenged, clips could be questioned, and Glenn's doorbell needed to stop being a rumor in his hand. Glenn was waiting in his doorway when I got back, wearing shoes this time. He had the embarrassed energy of a man who had agreed to help and then read too much on the internet. It says exporting can overwrite if you do it wrong, he said. I told him we would not do it wrong. That was confidence I did not own yet. We sat at my table with his phone, his tablet, the little doorbell manual, and my laptop that still opened slower than my knees. The app showed storage at 98%. Delivery trucks, kids on bikes, and routine hallway clips were all sitting there ready to push last night out of memory. Glenn's finger hovered over download and stopped. If this makes things worse for you, Henry, I said. It already got worse when he hit me. Now we just decide whether he gets to name it. The first export failed. The app spun for 3 minutes, then gave us a gray error box and logged Glenn out. Glenn cursed softly and looked toward the hallway, as if Marcus might be standing there with a policy manual. While he reset the password, my phone buzzed. Marcus again. I hear Glenn is nervous. Don't pressure an old neighbor into your story. I showed it to Glenn without speaking. He read it twice. His face changed, not into courage exactly, but into irritation. Old neighbor, he said. He always was a mouthy kid. That was the first time all day Glenn sounded like himself. He called his daughter in Arizona, who walked him through saving the original file to his cloud account before making a copy for me. The file that finally landed on my laptop was not dramatic. 37 seconds. Door clicks. Muffled voices. My sentence about love and hunger. A hard movement, maybe a chair, maybe Marcus stepping back. His voice saying, "You made me do that." Too low, but clear enough after Glenn's daughter adjusted the volume. Then my voice, smaller than I remembered, telling him to leave. We played it once. We did not play it again. Glenn put the file on a flash drive and wrote the date on a piece of masking tape. I can say where it came from, he said. I can't say I saw him hit you. I told him that was exactly what he should say. Limited truth felt weak, but it was stronger than a useful lie. By evening, the envelope held the urgent care note, printed screenshots, Tanya's template, Karen's received message, and Glenn's flash drive. It did not feel like victory. It felt like carrying fragile dishes across a room where Marcus kept moving the furniture. Denise called once more and told me not to meet Marcus alone that night. Karen emailed that she would schedule a joint clarification call the next morning with me present. "Your son has asked to speak separately first," she wrote.
I am declining that. I read that sentence 3 times. Marcus had not lost yet, but he had lost the easiest thing, the right to explain me when I was not in the room. At 7:40, Marcus used the key anyway, not fully. I heard it enter the lock, felt the deadbolt catch because I had thrown the chain for the first time in years, and stood on the other side of the door with my phone recording in my hand. "Dad," he said through the gap, soft enough for neighbors, "we need to talk before you do something you can't take back." I told him the conversation would happen on Karen's call. He said Karen did not understand family. I said family did not give him private access after a slap. His face shifted in the narrow opening, and for a second I saw the same flatness from the kitchen. Then Glenn's door opened across the hall. Marcus stepped back, smiled at both of us, and said, "This is exactly what I mean. He's being coached." That small hallway scene taught me the next repair. Proof was not enough if Marcus could still enter whenever he wanted and call it care. I emailed my doctor's office asking to remove Marcus from any informal contact list until I provided written authorization. I left a message for the building manager about changing the lock cylinder and door code. I put Denise's safety resource sheet under the envelope, not because paper made me safe, but because each paper closed one little door Marcus had been using without asking. Before bed, Karen sent the call invite. Marcus accepted within 3 minutes. His reply copied Tanya and said, "Happy to clarify concerns around Dad's recent confusion." The word Dad looked like a costume. The next morning, I laid everything on the table in the order it happened, not in the order that made me look best. That mattered more than I wanted it to. Screenshot of Marcus saying I would cool off and make pancakes. Tanya's prepared testimonial. Photo of the unsigned access page. Urgent care note. Glenn's flash drive. Karen's email declining to speak with Marcus alone. I wrote one sentence on the envelope. "This does not show the slap. It shows the pressure around it." When Karen joined the video call at 9, she noticed that sentence first. "Thank you for being precise," she said. It was the first sentence from her that sounded like the call might stay fair. Marcus joined from his office, agency logo on the wall behind him, Tanya half visible through the glass behind his chair. He had chosen the room carefully. I could see the framed certificate over his shoulder and a poster about dignity and care. Karen introduced the call as a clarification regarding consent, family reference use, and reported safety concerns. Marcus tried to interrupt on the word reported. Karen did not let him. She asked me to describe what I was willing to verify. I said he brought papers, asked for a testimonial, threatened to describe me as slipping, struck me after I refused, and came back expecting breakfast. Then I said the medical note documented injury in my statement, not a court finding. The audio documented hallway pressure, not the slap. Marcus looked relieved for half a second, as if limits meant escape. Then Karen asked Marcus why Tanya's template said, "Henry can sign after breakfast if I had not confirmed." Marcus said the line was shorthand. She asked why he represented my consent to the referral network before the visit. He said family conversations are fluid. Denise, who had joined by phone with my permission, asked whether a care manager should continue a consent conversation after a client or family member says no. Marcus said I was not a client. Denise answered, "That makes the pressure less appropriate, not more." Glenn spoke once. He said Marcus had contacted him after the breakfast and suggested I might pressure him. He said he had exported the original clip before storage overwrite. He did not say he knew more. He did not need to. Marcus's best move was personal. He stopped arguing policy and looked straight into the camera at me. "Dad, tell them how many times I've taken you to appointments. Tell them who changed your smoke detector. Tell them who shoveled after the storm." Every item was true,
and for a second I felt the pull of it. A son can be useful and still be dangerous. I said that out loud. My voice shook on dangerous, but I did not take it back.
Marcus leaned closer to the camera. "This is what grief did to him," he said to Karen. "He turns care into accusation." Karen's face did not change, but her pen stopped moving. That pause frightened me until she asked Marcus to send the full internal timeline Tanya had circulated, including edits. He did not want to send it. That reluctance did what my anger could not. Karen waited silently while Tanya emailed the file. The first draft still had a line Marcus had removed. "Henry needs to appear independent but appreciative. Do not push POA until after testimonial." Nobody spoke for several seconds after Karen read it aloud. The sentence did not prove the slap, but it proved the design of the morning. I saw Marcus understand the difference too late. He could deny the hand. He could not deny that he had planned to use my apparent independence as a sales prop before asking for authority over it. By the end of the call, Karen said the network would not use my home, my statement, or my image in any referral material, and Marcus would not present the family-centered care segment while the matter was reviewed. Denise gave me a separate number for follow-up safety planning and emergency contact changes. Glenn took his phone back across the hall like a man returning from a place he had never meant to visit. Marcus stayed on the call after everyone else dropped, just me and him for 2 seconds before Karen ended the room. "You should have let me talk to you privately," he said. Then the screen went dark, and for the first time in 2 days, his private voice had nowhere to go. Karen's follow-up email arrived 20 minutes later and asked for one combined packet, not a storm of separate messages. That request forced me to choose what mattered. I left out the old years. Marcus forgetting my birthday, Marcus borrowing tools and not returning them, Marcus eating Eleanor's pancakes without looking at the empty chair. Those things were real, but they were not proof. I included only the timeline, screenshots, urgent care note, testimonial template, doorbell file source statement, and my written refusal to sign access or authority papers. At the bottom I wrote, "I am not asking you to decide my family. I am asking you not to let my son sell my consent after I refused it." Marcus answered the packet without seeing it. He texted, "You are pressuring Glenn and manipulating Denise. This is elder self-neglect with an audience." I almost laughed at the phrase, because it sounded like Tanya had polished it. Then I understood the threat inside it. If he could not make me grateful, he would make me unsafe. If he could not use me as a model father, he would use me as a model problem. I forwarded the message to Karen and Denise without commentary. That restraint cost me more than another paragraph of defense would have. But part of keeping proof clean was letting Marcus's own words stand long enough for other people to read them. That evening, Glenn knocked again and handed me a second flash drive. "Back up," he said. He had written "original copy" in block letters on tape, then under it, because he could not help himself, "not edited." I placed it in the envelope and slid the envelope into the drawer under Eleanor's notebook. The drawer stuck halfway, the way it always had, and for a second I imagined her telling me not to slam it. I did not slam it. I closed it carefully. Tomorrow would not be about finding more facts. It would be about whether the facts we had were enough to cost Marcus the one thing he had tried to buy with my breakfast. Karen's final decision came in a conference call with 3 people I could not see, and Marcus pretending not to be angry. The network would continue reviewing his agency for limited administrative referrals, but Marcus was removed from the family trust presentation, the home-based showcase, and any material involving my name, face, apartment, or statement. It was not a firing. It was not a public disgrace. It was worse for the story he had tried to sell. He could still talk about staffing, scheduling, billing, and compliance, but he could not stand in front of a room and say, "I know care because I care for my own father." Karen said the phrase, "reputational conflict," and Marcus's mouth tightened. He tried to make it about me one last time. So one disputed family incident erases years of work? Karen answered that the issue was not one incident, but consent representation, pressure around authority documents, and unresolved safety concerns involving the person he wanted to use as a reference. Denise added that I had declined his participation in my care planning. I heard Marcus inhale through his nose. That small sound carried more anger than anything he said. "Dad," he said, "tell them you don't want to damage my career." It was the old hook, baited with pity. I said I did not want his career built on my fear. Nobody spoke for a moment after that. Then Karen moved to next steps, as if the sentence had become part of the record. The practical consequences arrived by email. Marcus had to transfer the family-centered care segment to another manager. Tanya had to correct the internal timeline and remove any reference to my verbal consent. The network would note that a proposed family testimonial had been withdrawn due to consent and safety concerns. Denise sent me a checklist for changing emergency contacts, door access, and doctor office communication permissions. The building manager scheduled a lock cylinder change for the next morning and reset the entry code by phone while I stood in the hallway. Each item sounded small. Together they moved Marcus out of the spaces where he had been calling control care. Tanya called me once, which I did not expect. Her voice had lost the office brightness from the template. She said she needed to verify that I had not authorized the phrase Henry confirmed. I told her I had not. She asked whether I wanted my phone number removed from Marcus's client family outreach list. That question showed me another door I had not known existed. My own son had made me part of his work pipeline. I said yes. She said, "I'm sorry this happened," then stopped. I did not ask her to say more. Her correction would cost Marcus more than sympathy would. He did not call for 3 hours. That was how I knew the consequence had landed. Marcus was a caller when he thought words could still repair his position. Silence meant he had found no clean sentence. At 6:30, a grocery delivery appeared at my door. Buttermilk, eggs, bacon, a carton of orange juice, and a package of the coffee he liked, all paid by Marcus. The note said, "For tomorrow. Let's talk like family before this gets uglier." I left the bags in the hallway until Glenn came out and raised his eyebrows. "You want me to witness milk now?" he asked. I almost smiled. Then I carried the groceries inside, photographed the note, and put everything except the coffee in my refrigerator. Food was not neutral anymore. At 7, Marcus texted, "One breakfast. No Karen, no Denise, no Glenn, just us." I read it twice and heard the demand under the plea. He did not ask to apologize in writing. He did not ask what I needed to feel safe. He asked for the one room where he had always been able to turn hunger into forgiveness. I answered, "No private visit. Written apology for striking me. Written withdrawal of any authority/access paperwork. Return key. Future contact by agreement." His reply came fast. "You sound like a lawyer." I typed back, "I sound like a man whose son still has a key." That night I made myself toast instead of pancakes. It was petty, maybe, but I could not stand the smell of batter. I put Marcus's coffee in the back of the cabinet unopened and placed the grocery note in the envelope with the other papers. The professional consequence had not made him sorry. It had made him strategic in a softer voice. Before bed, I took Eleanor's notebook out of the drawer and moved it to the top shelf where Marcus could not reach it by habit if he ever got inside again. The kitchen was not safe because people had believed me. It would become safe only when belief changed what he could still do. The next morning, the locksmith arrived before Marcus did. I had not told Marcus the time, but I still watched the parking lot while the cylinder came out of the door. The locksmith was a young man with earbuds around his neck and no interest in family drama. He handed me 2 new keys and asked if I wanted the old one back as a souvenir. I said no. Glenn, from his doorway, said he would take a picture of the receipt if I wanted a record. I did. By then, I had become the kind of man who photographed receipts, notes, delivery bags, and door hardware. That was one of Marcus's costs to me. He had turned ordinary trust into paperwork. At noon, Karen sent one more update. Marcus's agency remained in review, but another manager would handle the network presentation, and Marcus was instructed not to contact me about referral materials. It was a narrow consequence, but it hit the exact place he had tried to use me. He could still be employed. He could still tell strangers he worked in care. What he could not do, for that room and that contract, was point to my kitchen and call himself safe. 10 minutes after Karen's email,
Marcus sent his private breakfast request again, shorter this time. Dad, don't make me come over there just to apologize.
Marcus came on Saturday morning with a paper grocery bag and no badge. That almost worked on me. The lack of badge made him look less like the man on the video call and more like the boy who used to stand in my doorway pretending he had not come for pancakes. He held the bag up through the hallway like proof of peace. "I brought the buttermilk back," he said, "and Mom's coffee." He had never called it Mom's coffee when Eleanor was alive. Back then it was just coffee, too strong, too cheap, always there. Memory became useful to him only after the lock changed. I did not open the door all the way. The chain stayed on. Glenn's door was closed, but I knew his camera was awake, and Marcus knew it too. He kept his voice low. "Can we not do this in the hall? Return the key!" He reached into his pocket and held up the old key between two fingers. "It's useless now." "Then it should be easy to give back." The old Marcus would have made a joke. This Marcus looked at the key as if I had asked for a finger. He slid it through the gap, and it hit the rug inside my door with a small sound that ended more than access. It ended the assumption that he could become family again by arriving hungry. He set the grocery bag down. "I messed up," he said. "Not I hit you, not I lied. Messed up. The same phrase people use for a missed appointment." I told him I needed the apology in writing. He looked toward Glenn's door. "Because you need evidence?" I said because I needed him to hear himself without an audience. That answer made him angry in a way he tried to swallow. "You don't understand what you've done to my work," he said. "They didn't remove the agency, they removed me. Do you know how that looks?" I said it looked like a man who sold care and forgot consent. His face tightened, and for a second, the hallway filled with the old kitchen air. Then he reached for the weapon that had always worked. "Mom would hate this." He said it softly, almost kindly. I felt the sentence go through me before I could defend against it. Eleanor had hated locked doors between family. She had also hated people leaving dirty pans in the sink, but Marcus had never honored that part of her. I looked past him at the stairwell, then down at the bag with buttermilk sweating through the paper. He had brought ingredients, not apology. He wanted me to turn them into absolution. I bent, picked up the old key from the rug, and put it on the little shelf beside the envelope instead of putting it back in my pocket. "Your mother fed people who were sorry," I said. "She did not feed lies." That was when his eyes changed, not with shame this time, but with loss he had not agreed to pay. He put one hand on the door frame. "I am still your son." I said yes, and that was why I was giving him conditions instead of a police report as my first language. Written apology, written withdrawal of access and authority papers. No private visits until I asked for one. No mention of me at work. No using Denise, Karen, or Glenn as villains in his story. He laughed once, bitter and short. "You have a whole policy now." I answered. "You taught me what informal care costs." He left the grocery bag. I did not bring it in until his car was gone. Inside were buttermilk, bacon, coffee, and a small envelope with a grocery store gift card. No letter, no apology, no withdrawal. Just supplies for a breakfast he still expected me to make. I put the bacon in the freezer, the buttermilk in the sink, and the gift card in the evidence envelope because by then everything from Marcus had two meanings. Then I took the second plate from the drying rack, the gray one he had used since college, and put it in the top cabinet behind the holiday bowls. My hand stayed on the cabinet door after it closed. I had not stopped loving my son. I had stopped setting a place for the version of him that hit me and came back hungry. At noon, I emailed the conditions to Marcus, copied no one, and wrote the subject line as plainly as I could: future contact. I did that because part of me still wanted to leave him one clean road back. The email had 5 lines. Acknowledge in writing that you struck me. Withdraw any care authority, access, or testimonial paperwork involving me. Do not enter or attempt to enter my apartment without invitation. Do not discuss me as a client, case, reference, or example at work. If you want a conversation, request it in writing first. I read the list twice before sending.
It sounded cold. It also sounded like a door that locked from my side. Marcus answered 40 minutes later. "I will not sign a confession written by people who turned you against me." The sentence made me sit down. There it was, the new family tree he was planting. Denise, Karen, Glenn, maybe even the doctor, all branches between father and son. He added that he would return anything related to paperwork once his office reviewed what could be withdrawn. Not I withdraw it. Not I was wrong to prepare it. His office, his review. His language still searched for a hallway where he could stand above me and translate my no into a symptom. I forwarded that reply to no one. I printed it and put it in the envelope. Then I called the building manager and confirmed the old door code was dead. I called my doctor's office and asked them to note that Marcus was not authorized for phone updates. I deleted him from the emergency contact field on the patient portal and put Glenn's daughter down only for key pickup if I was hospitalized, after asking Glenn and her both. That last part hurt in a strange, practical way. Replacing a son on a form is not dramatic. It is 5 minutes of typing and a lifetime of admitting why. That evening I washed the griddle until the black surface shone. I did not make dinner on it. I just wanted it clean without owing anyone breakfast. The old key sat on the shelf beside the envelope. The gray plate was above my reach unless I got the step stool. That was good. A boundary should require effort to undo. Marcus sent one final text before midnight. "Happy now?" I looked at it for a long time and did not answer. Happiness had nothing to do with it. I had a locked door, a sore face, and one less plate on the counter. For that night, that had to be enough. Marcus did not send the apology that week. He sent a shorter message through email, probably because someone at work had told him not to text anymore. "I regret that our disagreement became physical. I hope we can move forward privately." That was as close as he came. I printed it anyway and wrote on the bottom, "Not accepted as apology, no private visit." Then I put it in the envelope and surprised myself by feeling no victory. A man can protect himself and still wish the person on the other side of the door had chosen better before protection became necessary. Karen's last update was narrow and professional. Marcus's agency stayed in the referral review, but Marcus would not present on family trust, would not submit family testimonials for compliance credit, and would not participate in any case involving my name. Tanya confirmed in writing that all draft authority/access language involving me had been withdrawn from their internal packet. Denise called once, asked whether the new lock was installed, and reminded me that I could make an APS report if I chose. I told her I was keeping the option open. That was the truth. I did not need a dramatic finish to prove I had been hurt. I needed enough doors closed that Marcus could not keep calling harm a care plan. The apartment changed in quiet, inconvenient ways. I learned the new key by feel. I stopped leaving the back porch light on for Marcus. I moved the spare medication list from the refrigerator door to a folder in my desk. Glenn kept acting like he had only helped a little, which was how I knew he understood he had helped a lot. Once in the hallway, he asked if I wanted the doorbell file deleted from his cloud account. I said no, not yet. He nodded and did not ask when not yet would end. Some evidence is not for punishment. Some evidence is something you keep until your hands stop shaking. I did not file a formal report that month. That may disappoint some people. It disappointed part of me. Denise left the door open, and I kept her number on the refrigerator for a while before moving it to the desk folder with the rest. What mattered first was that Marcus no longer had a key, a consent form, a testimonial, or a private route to describe me as declining without me in the room. If he crossed the new line, I had the medical note, the audio, the messages, and the people who had watched him try to turn breakfast into compliance. That was not forgiveness. It was a loaded shelf I hoped never to pull down. On the first Sunday after it was over, I opened Eleanor's notebook again. The pancake page had a thumbprint in the corner. Maybe hers, maybe mine. I made half a batch, 1 egg, 1 cup of flour, enough for 1 plate, and 1 extra pancake that I wrapped and put in the freezer because old cafeteria habits die hard. I did not use Marcus's coffee. I drank my own, too weak by his standards. The gray plate stayed above the holiday bowls. I could have reached it with the step stool. I did not. The point of a boundary is not that you cannot cross it. The point is that you have to know you are choosing to cross it. And I was not choosing that. 2 weeks later, Marcus mailed the old paperwork back in a flat envelope. No note. The pages were unsigned, uncreased except where his folder clips had held them. I shredded the access authorization and kept only the blank testimonial with my typed name at the bottom. I kept it because it reminded me how clean a lie can look before anyone eats breakfast under it. He also enclosed the grocery gift card. I sent it back with a printed copy of my conditions and no handwritten line. That felt harsh for about an hour.
Then I remembered the sentence he had sent Glenn. Don't let him pressure you into his story. I had spent years feeding Marcus out of mine. If you are listening to this and thinking you would have acted faster, maybe you would have. I hope you would. But if you have ever loved someone who returns hungry after hurting you, you know the hardest door to lock is not the one in the hallway. It is the place inside you that starts setting a plate before the person has apologized. I still love my son. That is not the part I am ashamed of. I am ashamed of how long I let love do the work that fear wanted done. Now my kitchen is quieter. Not happier, quieter. There is a difference. The last message from Marcus came on my birthday. It was a digital grocery card and 3 words. Hope you're well. No apology, no request, no breakfast. I left it unopened until evening, then moved it into a folder marked Marcus. Not family, not emergency, not care. The label looked cold on the screen. It also looked accurate. I made 1 pancake for dinner because I wanted to prove the smell still belonged to me. It did. I ate at the table with Eleanor's notebook closed beside me, the new key in the small dish by the door, and no second plate waiting across from mine. The next morning, Glenn left a paper bag at my door with 2 oranges and a note that said, "No need to cook for me." I laughed for the first time without checking whether it sounded bitter. Then I put 1 orange in the refrigerator and 1 beside Eleanor's notebook. Care can be small and still not ask for ownership. That was the lesson Marcus had missed in every professional sentence he ever learned. He knew schedules, forms, referrals, and how to sound calm in front of a compliance director. He had forgotten that the person being cared for still gets to say no. Thank you for listening to the end. If this story made you think about where family care ends and control begins, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments, should a parent forgive a grown child who apologizes only after losing access? Your comments help the next story reach someone who may need to hear it before they set the table again.